So what's going on? A deliberate attack on civil society. And you wonder, how did we end up here? Because there was once a time where we thought liberal democracy, that's the future we're heading, civil society very important. But somehow, and we have an expert who will bring us through the developments. Yeah, at this moment, more than 70%, according to Civicus, who monitor this civic space, of the people in this world live in situations that one may describe as closed or oppressed. And for the first time, we have more autocracies than democracy. And why did we end up here? And what is exactly the strategies? What exactly strategies did civil societies in the future use to push against authoritarian tendencies? And what can we learn from the practice? So in this conversation, we'll focus on Africa, because the majority of the countries is not as free. Civic space is being shrinked. And we see one of the speakers, Professor Bert Koenders. Are you joining us, or are you coming later on?
I'm not sure I'm in the right place. Is this about the world civil society freedom?
Yes.
Then I'm in the right place. It's
Please.
Language coordinate.
Please, go ahead.
Apologies. Sorry, Kisa. My goodness.
Black for you.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So we have distinguished speakers. Yair van der Leyen, who is a senior researcher and the head of program at the CIPRI. And you will tell us more about what you are doing and your relationship to this topic. And here we have, of course, Bert Koenders, who is professor of law. And please don't look at my sheets notes.
My CV. I'm happy to be here.
He's a professor of peace and law.
This organization, the Max van der Stoel Foundation, and we're very proud to be here with everybody here. I see our vice president, everybody. So great, you want to lead this debate.
He's actually our host, but today he's in his capacity as the chair of the Advisory Council for Foreign Affairs for the Dutch Ministry, where he was, of course, ministers and hold other prestigious positions. And from his experience as someone who operates both in the Netherlands and these multilateral sectors, he will also enlighten us on his perspective on how to fight back. And his organization, the Council, also recently published a report on civil societies. But before we go to you, gentlemen, we have two speakers from Sudan and the DRC. We will start with Winnie Chiluba, who is an advocacy expert for Coded. I want to make sure that I see you, Winnie.
Here I am.
We can hear you clearly. Yes, and we can see you. So, Winnie, could you please tell us what you are doing there as advocates for women and good governance, and also how the civic space is being attacked or shrinked in the DRC?
Yes, actually, as you introduced me, I'm Winnie, and I'm an advocacy consultant in Coded right now. And we are doing a lot of things, working with the Just Future Alliance, where we work in three trajectory: security, justice, and also peace, inclusive peace. But focus on inclusive peace, we are working really closely with civil society and women so that we can enhance capacity of women, but also push advocacy on how women can be part of all these peace negotiation, actually. Where is the place of the women in peace negotiation, actually, in DRC? So actually that's what we are doing as women in women, peace and security. And also we are pushing advocacy also for youth, how youth can be part on all those peace process in DRC, working closely with youth in Kinshasa, working closely with youth in North Kivu, South Kivu, and Ituri, where there is a lot of conflict actually. So for my own perspective, speaking today for civil society, shrinking civil society is not like a theory. We are living it actually in DRC. Because as you know, we have two contexts in DRC. There is violence from conflicts, and this is actually in DRC in the eastern part. We have the M23, for example, where they are actually in North Kivu and South Kivu, local civil society are being directly targeted. And we are facing a lot of civil society activists who are leaving the eastern part because they are fleeing for their life. Actually, in this particular context, there is reporting the truth. From my own perspective, actually reporting the truth is a matter of life and death. How will we continue to reporting about what is happening in our place where we are dying? So there is a lot of civil society activists who are fleeing for their life in northern Kivu and also in Ituri. That is the where there is conflict, active conflict actually. Speaking to in Kinshasa, there is institutional strangulation. We as civil society, sometimes we don't understand what is happening because we are seeing a lot of arbitrary arrests and detention of political opponents, for instance, for civil society activists, for everyone. So like there is a lot of laws when they arrest people, but we don't know how to face that situation in Kinshasa, for instance, where civil society is, even if it is in the capital city, the institutional strangulation is more intense in that city because government authority use vague security laws.
Yes.
So it is like a vague security laws where they are using.
So the way I understand it, it's not only in these conflict areas in the North Kivu and South Kivu, but also in the capital, even in the capital, where you would expect it's more easy. But these harsh laws are, making the work of activists and CSOs difficult.
Yes.
Could you maybe explain us how, from your work, working with the youth and women, how are these developments affecting your work? And how do you navigate the context that you just described with us?
Yes, exactly. Facing all this context, it's affecting our work because, for instance, when you are working with politicians here in Kinshasa, where there is really instability when we will begin working with, for instance, one minister for defense, for instance, and 2 months later, he's going, and another one come without finishing what you were doing with that one. It is leading that the work we are doing is returning back, as I can say it. It is like we are not moving forward.
Yes.
The engagement one people can take, it's not they are not taking into consideration because the other one will come and has his own perspective, his own politics, his own actors, his own objectives. So it is quite a little bit complicated navigate with all those politicians to taking into consideration the work we are doing, especially when we are doing work with youth and also women. Those two kind of category, they are not really considered in all the
decision-making
process.
process.
Yeah,
And Winnie, maybe as
exactly.
last question, very short, before we go to Yeno from South Sudan. So the way I understand, it's really, yeah, the continuity is difficult and it's difficult to build relationships. Could you maybe tell us, because you said that reporting the truth is a matter of, of death. I don't know whether I understood. Could you tell us, in your work with Code, do you feel that you can still, express yourself or organize, or is there also the fear that you described also in your work?
Yeah, seeing the context, actually, we are trying to see what we can say and what we cannot say. The great activist is the one who's living. So yes, actually, the context, it's affecting our work. For instance, for Codage, we more work in the South Kivu, in North Kivu. We are more in the eastern parts. So all the work we are doing, actually, we are, this context in DRC actually affects really our work. Even if we are working with youth in North and South Kivu, but we have to make sure that when we are talking to them, they are in security.
Yes. So you need to keep their security into account. Make sure that you don't put them in danger. Yeah, thank you very much for providing this context. I'll make sure that we come back to you, as I think your context described clearly what happens, that people disappear, some people leave the country, the lack of continuity, and also, it takes a lot of mental load, because you have to think on what to say and what not to say, and also, to make sure that you don't put your colleagues into danger. I would like to go to Yeno Suzanne, who is a senior program officer from South Sudan for Coded, also extensive experience in this field. For the context, originally I thought we are going to start here, but things happened. But sometimes it's just good to hear from the field, people who can actually explain what happened. But I guarantee you, we'll make sure that everything's come together. Yeno, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And we can hear you and see you clearly. Last year, we had a conversation on women's rights defender, and also some of the insights about people leaving the country, where you end up losing a lot of resources were discussed. I wonder, your view on this topic today, and maybe also, in relationship to what your colleague from the DRC just shared. But could you tell us what's going on in South Sudan and this civic space, how you navigate through it?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kiza. Speaking from South Sudan, I can say that the civic space in South Sudan is actually heavily restricted, and with time, actually, it even gets worse. We see that there's a lot of censorship, there's a lot of surveillance going on, harassments also that happen in this country. It's even worse, especially for women and the youth or the young generation, actually, to have operating in South Sudan. So for South Sudan is not any different from Congo, as my colleague has actually said it. But we have been able still to work in this space that is really heavily restricted. We have been working with different partners in this country as Code Aid, actually, in South Sudan. And we have been able, to actually mentor some coalitions, some networks that have been formed in the country, women human rights defenders, by actually equipping them with some skills on how they can peacefully and be cautious when they are doing actually a lot of advocacy in the country. So we have also been supporting partners whereby we have actually taken into the dimension of legal reforms, because we know actually when the legal dimension is not properly stipulated, it becomes actually very hard to operate in the country, and that also affects the civic space, because we know in South Sudan that is also politicized. The laws are very ambiguous at times on how to operate in this civic space. We have also done a lot of networking and building platforms whereby, you know, much can be done in this country to ensure that we continue to operate even when the civic space is restricted in country, at the regional level, and going to global level as well. We have been able to work with the regional bodies that are in country, for example, the IGAD, ESC, and the African Union, and also the joint monitoring committee that is in the country, which is ADJAMEC, which is monitoring the peace process in South Sudan. I know that for South Sudan, it becomes more complicated, and I mentioned the issue about the peace process, because from the outside, it may look like even the civil society is not doing nothing, but there is so much that is actually going on in this dimension as well. So the space is really very restrictive, and we have been very innovative in a way that we empower people differently. For example, for the women, for the youth, and so on. Code Aid, actually in collaboration with other entities like Cvic, we have been able to develop the Women Human Rights Defenders Toolkit. And we are hoping that this will also help the diplomatic missions on pushing certain agendas to ensure the civic space in a country like South Sudan. And then also we have trained a couple of youth actually on video advocacy, because we know that technology is now the in thing that is happening.
Did you say video advocacy?
Yes.
And that
so,
is?
We are training different youth on how to use technology to do advocacy on pressing issues within the country in a very way that will actually attract many. We have also built alliances with different stakeholders, like with the government, the diplomatic mission. But I'm also sad to say that so many diplomatic missions are pulling out of South Sudan as a country, including actually the embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we very well know that when these pull out of the country, it actually weakens the diplomatic relationship with in the country, and that will actually make it worse for the civic space and civil society, actually, and many actors who want to echo pressing issues in the country. So that is the outlook of what is really happening in South Sudan.
Thank you very much, Yeno. I hope, I did not stop you too early, but your approach is interesting because, yes, the civic space is restricted, but you also highlight the kind of activities that you are doing and actually also shared some, hope on what needs to happen. And of course, this diplomatic missions going out of South Sudan is maybe, a recommendation. That, so I'm happy that you already highlight the solutions, because I was planning to discuss that later on. But maybe for our understanding, with your work and the kind of activities that you are doing, do you also have the same experience as Winnie from the DRC, that you have to take certain things into account to make sure that your colleagues are not in danger? Or do you also see the fear that she describes, leading to people maybe disappearing or leaving the country?
Absolutely. We also have to be very cautious on how we put information out there, because in South Sudan, it doesn't matter whether you are a citizen, you're working for an international organization or any other dimension, or even the private sector. The challenges remain the same, but we have been able to know how to package our information, or even with our partners, how do we package the information for it to be passed out? How do we also communicate that information? Who do we use as allies to ensure that we pass out this information? And then the kind of protection that maybe these people may need, we have also tried to build some kind of collaborations, but that is actually very limited in a way that when one needs actually protection. We have seen it, for example, with the women human rights defenders. It's only, maybe you can be evacuated, and that is not for everybody. We know that there are so many who have gotten into trouble in this country, and very few have had the opportunity to be taken out of the country. But then the challenge is, okay, once they are evacuated, maybe, for example, out of the country, that is it. There is no more support that is actually extended to them. No other measures, and so much is going on, and that actually also affects their work, affects their mental and physical being, and so much more. So yes, we also need to have precautions on how that is done and who we approach and how we approach the specific issues or people who can actually help to ensure that we do the right thing at the right time.
Yes. Yeah, that's a quite challenging position. Thank you for sharing that with us. We will make sure that we come at the end to hear your thoughts on the discussion and also go a bit further on the recommendation. But I was taking notes, and I hope I see other people. So for now, let's go to the gentleman. I will take this. I forgot, it's fashion. But sometimes you need to pay the price. So, Bert, could I start with you? Very short, before we go to Yair, we'll go in your current position and what you do also in regard to this topic. But maybe very short, civil societies, the space being shrinked. Yeah, the title was the importance of protecting civic space. From your perspective, because you have been in many positions, even now, where you engage with civil society organization, why is that important?
Our report, and
Oh yeah, there's a microphone for you.
Not only, and apologize for
We'll go in the report later on, but please go.
Yeah. Does it work? Yes. Look, civic space is key to all of our societies, wherever we are in the world, in Europe or in Africa. It is civil society organizations, it's free press, it's free assembly, it's freedom of speech. It's thinking through what technology means for free speech online and offline. And we're in a situation in the world for a couple of reasons we could discuss. It's not so easy to discuss, but it leads to the fact that, as we know, we are in an enormous democratic recession, that in 117 countries in the world, there is a restriction on this space, which has tremendous consequences for citizens, but also for international relations. We see press freedom very quickly being reduced in many countries. And therefore it is important, I think, to underline the urgency of all this, because it goes all much quicker than maybe not all of you here, but many people in society realize. We have a combination of the wrong securitization in many countries, which limits free space, free assembly. We see strong economic competition related to cartels and, in many countries, literally big man politics. And we see governments acting on that wavering, as if they have nothing to defend. And this brings me to the realization, and I think many, that we better defend this very urgently. And that goes from very specific points, like the issue of, do we have an embassy in South Sudan or not? Of course it's crazy to close after so many years of cooperation, investing in cooperation, good and bad.
So lost relationships and continuity within the multilateral.
Enormous. Yeah. So that's one thing, but maybe there are many other things, but you asked me to answer shortly, and I'm not good in short answers. So
yes.
But this is an urgency that deals with a worldwide trend where we have now, for the first time, more autocracies than democracies in the last 10 years. Before that, it was different.
Yes.
And that we see similar trends, but we have to study them case by case to see where the momentum is for change and who could be supported. That's different in South Sudan, from Bangladesh, from Mali, from other places.
So the way I understand it is that it's really about power, actually, and the government, being not that strong to defend these civil societies, even sometimes being complicit. That's what I take.
I think in many places, of course. I mean, we all read about the autocratic handbook. The first thing in an autocratic handbook is to limit the free space for NGOs, for unions. The second is to limit also, sometimes for good reasons, but mostly for bad reasons, foreign financing of these organizations. It means in many cases that in these 50 grades of shade between autocracy and democracy, because it's not so dark and white, that we have to think through, and that is maybe what I could say about the report we made, that if you want to support the broadening of civic space, it depends in what kind of country you're actually working. Is that a country which is a democracy according to many standards, but is at a risk of a populist revenge, so to speak? We can discuss that, what that means. It's very different from a fragile state, and I don't like the word fragility, but unfortunately, they often have to deal with two of the countries that we were just speaking to, which are in serious conflict. That's a very different approach on how you can support or enlarge civic space than in a complete dictatorship, where the limits are. So we have to think through also what are actually our best instruments for something that is at stake worldwide right now.
Yes, thank you very much. Yair, could you please give us some context on what is going on? Because for CIPRI, the Stockholm Institute of Peace and Research?
The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute.
So you have been, of course, you both have that relationship with peace, but civil society is apparently an important part of your work. Also, you focus on these multilateral relationships and, yes, local organization and these multilateral organization. I think that all the kind of things that you and your team focus on have been discussed so far. Could you tell us what is happening and maybe make sure that we as outsiders who don't know these concepts actually understand what's going on and why it's important to discuss this?
Well, I think, is it working? Let's use this one, yeah. Okay, I think, a lot of things have already been touched on. It's really interesting to hear that, South Sudan, DRC, totally different countries. At the same time, there's a lot of similarity. And what we've been doing actually with Cordate is bringing civil society organizations together from other countries as well, Mali, Niger, Burundi, very different. And at the same time, what we discovered, there are also a lot of...
Would you please keep the mic? Yeah, thank you.
I'll keep it here. There are a lot of similarities, actually. So, for example, 3 ways in how often civic space is closed. 1, by administrative hurdles. Introducing laws and regulations on how to report, for example. We know the rule of law. Those kind of governments apply a rule by law. You make it very difficult.
Could you please explain us what the difference is?
What it means is, for example, that they introduce a law which is very difficult to obey in a way, where civil society organizations are required to report very frequently, up to every month. Now, if you have to report that often, you're drowning in administration, and basically you're no longer able to really do your work. That's one thing. Another one is funding restrictions. You already touched on them. I mean, we've heard about the foreign agent law in Russia, for example, where a certain percentage of your organization needs to be funded nationally, which is kind of difficult in a lot of countries, actually. So that's also being introduced in Africa. There are countries where, for example, in Niger, French funding is basically off limits, which used to be, one of the bigger donors. And then, of course, given the fact that these are restrictive spaces, and what you see, for example, with the Netherlands leaving South Sudan, in countries where there are really authoritarian regimes, in countries where there are military juntas, we add extra hurdles to the mix because we implement sanctions, we add sanctions. We add additional restrictions. We actually don't really, we don't like to fund these kind of countries. So that's the third hurdle.
So how can I explain that? The relationships?
Well,
isolation, or how do I understand?
it means that civil society organizations not only are forced by their own government to fundraise nationally, but also that internationally, international donors are stepping back and saying, well, we don't want to fund these difficult countries. We don't know exactly what is happening.
Which can end up isolating, I think, these civil society.
Leaves them kind of uncovered, yeah. At the same time, civil society is not, lame duck. Civil society is actually responsive. They actually have agency, so they can also do things, regardless of these difficult situations. First of all, if you stay in the country, a lot of them are fleeing, but when they stay in the country, the first thing they have to do is stay within the law. If the law is, you have to notify if you're going to organize an activity. If the law is, you have to invite the government to participate. If you have to report on each activity, that's what you'll do. So that, you can continue your activities. But then the second thing is to actually build a relationship with the government and with people in the government. So that means, there's some of the examples, for example, where, there was someone, new government, one of the civil society organizations decided, you know what, we have to build a relationship, we have to build rapport. We visit the new governor. Initially, no interest at all.
So you need to shake hands with the devil in this context?
You have to not necessarily. Well, you have to shake. You have to shake hands.
Survival mechanism.
You have to shake hands with the devil, but not walk the same path. What you should do is, at some point you get the intention, because it's annoying that guy is still sitting there every week. So you start to have a conversation. You start to have dialogue. Slowly, you build trust by explaining what you are doing. And then slowly, at some point, they better understand what is going on. And ideally, eventually, and you see that relationships are being built, they don't necessarily see you anymore as a spy, a foreign agent, or someone who's collaborating with terrorists.
So this requires a lot of skills, I assume.
It takes a lot of time.
Do you also have other coping strategies, or this agency you're describing that you've noticed in these countries?
Yeah, so that's coping mechanisms are you stay within the law, you try to build rapport with the government, and let me think of the third one.
We can come back to that later, but maybe a very serious question. Did you find cases where people can be, how do you call that, incorporated? What's the technical words? Yeah, that you are being co-opted, maybe because also in the Netherlands we know this mechanism. There is a risk that you are very harsh, and then you have a dialogue before you know you are just we see at least that's just a distraction. Before you know, you become part of the regime. I see Bert is smiling, so I'm curious in your thoughts, and also go to Bert on this.
No, I think, of course, and in fact, I mean, civil society itself is often in conflict areas also divided, right? There are countries where, well, take Mali, take Niger, civil society, some are staying true to, let's say, the ideas that we feel are related to rule of law. Others embrace the government and think that finally this is the way to deal with the terrorists.
So it's a different strategies to realize your goals, I assume.
Well, it's different political opinions as well.
Yeah, okay, exactly. It's not only strategy. Bert, on these points?
No, yeah, on civic space, I mean, I use the word civic space on purpose. It's much broader than civil society and NGOs. You have good and bad NGOs. You have more and more the anti-democratic NGOs are being emancipated in many countries. You have an enormous use of new organizations in maybe political purposes that we don't particularly like as we sit here together. But still, it is important to realize that civic space is something much broader than only these organizations. It's the space that you have to fight for, and at the same time that has to be given to you. That's the role of governments, in order to enlarge the choices of our citizens. That's the key aspect. It's not only about funding NGOs and money. It is much broader than that. And that is being very much encapsulated at this moment. Yeah. So the instrument of, look at the internet, which started off as an enormous emancipatory movement in the Arab Spring.
Now has become a tool of restriction.
Has been a column of what now is called, this surveillance capitalism, if you like. Yeah. So it's important, I think, to look at it. Secondly, yes, of course you can be accepted. I mean, I remember as Minister for International Development, of course there was always the sense we supported Core Aid and others. There was a discussion, should that be reduced? Where should the money go? Do people feel encapsulated then by the Dutch state in what they could do or not do? So in that sense, there's always that risk, I think. My sense now is, I mean, I just want to plead, and that's why this is so important. We are part of a much larger struggle. And so we have to talk about the instruments we have to enlarge civic space. And that's at different levels. That's at the level of our governments. When we speak out about the value of democracy and human rights, that we do it with courage. That when it comes to, for instance, the organization, it might sound like a different topic, but it isn't. The international legal institutions in The Hague, that we defend them. That when we are working on our foreign policy, that our embassies are not closed because we think we do not have direct economic or political interest, but because the civic space is a value and an intrinsic necessity in itself. That when we talk about democracy, we have major cuts now in the Dutch budget. I'm not talking only about money, but in terms of supporting that, not as a narrative imposed. I think we're in a different time. That's good. But because we're in a different time, we have to see through per country where one can support the people we just have spoke to. There is another issue that I would like to mention, especially in the African context. The enormous pride and courage of Gen Z in Kenya, in many other places, is something in which we have to think through what is the reaction of governments there. Is it security or accountability? Most governments, including in many countries in the West,
we tend to go for security.
Would go, yes, because they are most fearful for accountability.
Yeah, exactly.
And therefore they, and if you don't have, the sort of the idea of support, things about enlarging the civic space and how to support that, they're going to win on that.
Yeah, but you touch a very important point. Actually, a few points. Civic space is a state of mind. It's different from society. I hope we keep that. Also, yeah, as critical reflection, are we being part of the civic space or maybe, yeah, becoming, shaking hands with the devil? Dialogue is, of course, important, I assume, as a civil society. But you also touch on a point that I want to ask you, but you are speaking on leadership, actually, because you're saying we need to defend, we need to speak out. I assume this is a message to the new government, because it also touched on some of your points in your advice that you wrote. It's not only about Africa or whatever, it's a global thing. Also here in the Netherlands, we need to actually look in the mirror.
Of course, we have to look in the mirror, especially as Europeans. We are at the moment, as Europeans, also, Trump is we have to mention him nevertheless, because we see what happens in the US.
Who?
The present president of the United States. I didn't want to mention him. And I'm not going to blame him as, first of all, we have autocracies in Russia and in China and many other places. But here was our defender of democracy, even if we thought it was sometimes hypocritical and it was sometimes short-sighted for American interests, but there was a system in which many countries in the world, including those from the global south who had been part and parcel of the growing of international human rights and democracy, I don't see them as starting only in one place, that leadership is falling away and actually could lead to two things. Either we stick together and our geopolitics is not seen as only something of power, but even international law and human rights are seen as geopolitically necessary. Look at the Ukraine, for instance. That's one point. And the second is we see that there is an international organization also anti-democratic, with financial instruments, with support, with disinformation.
Such as?
Well, look at the enormous support for populist parties financially through disinformation and so on and so forth. So civil space, I don't want to say, by the way, that civil space is only for people who might agree with us. That would be very short-sighted.
Exactly.
But it is to realize that that space is being filled because we have a power vacuum and a sense in many countries, including in Africa. I've seen it in Mali where I've worked, where many of the young generation have said democracy doesn't deliver for us.
Yes.
Doesn't mean they automatically will be happy, and I'm sure they won't, with the enormous repressive military leadership right now. But it is something we have to think through, the relationship between civil society and the state. It would be also very easy, and it's the last point.
Yeah, I really want to say something.
Is on this issue of the anti-political. That's a risk too. Populist likes to see that all politics is elite, is against us. In some cases, that's absolutely true. Take a few countries that we were just mentioning. But the point is also how we, in the support of civil society, think through how that element of democracy building, which most people in the world still want, Afro-barometers, Latin American barometers and others, can also create a situation in which we are not part of an oligarchy that determines what happens in our democracy. And that's what we see
a lot
in quite a few countries.
There, Yair?
You know, I want to add, because I think it's really easy to refer to Trump, because he's the outsider. I think we actually have the internal problem. The EU was broadly seen as a normative power, not necessarily military, but normative. That is no longer the case. We've lost completely. And in part that is to our responses to Gaza, for example, and in part that is also to us withdrawing our support, let's say, to democratic movements, civil society, etc., also in Africa.
Which is a contradiction, because Bert said that the United States, and of course Europe was seen as the leader of this democratic tradition where CSOs play an important role.
They feel now lost.
But of course, for many people in the South, experience this inconsistency. Also, some of the point that Bear touched, sometimes you make a choice for securitization, and which goes take accountability at risk. So there is this, and that's a criticism, should we look at Europe as the guide for civil societies, or should we reimagine our world order and also reflect on the role of civil society? I don't know whether I do justice to some of your points.
We have a choice in Europe. And the choice is the following. I agree with my neighbor, President Trump. That's why we don't like to mention him, because he's the symptom, he's not the cause. It's the symptom of politics we see in many countries in different forms. That's the attraction of the autocratic leadership in terms of many challenges we have, with the idea that the people are against the elite. We have that in Europe, we have it in this country.
So it's about feeding pessimism, which, is in danger to the account.
But I'm not pessimism is a political instrument. The future of Europe is not preordained. In each of our elections, in each of our struggles for civil society, for the feminist movement, for the movement on the environment, it's not preordained at all that it will be lost by democratic
forces. So that's why we need to fight. Please let me allow Yair to go on this point, on the role of Europe.
Oh yeah, on the role of Europe, I think we've lost the moral leadership. In the past, it was a difficult and a fragile relationship, let's say. Right now, civil society in Africa is looking at Europe, thinking, we're on our own, and I think that's also where, in many ways we have to go. If we bring the discussion back to Africa and to the field, we still have a little bit of influence. In part, still with support for civil society organizations, for example. I would definitely broaden it up. It's traditional leaders, it's what have you, informal leaders, and if you look at the kind of cooperation that we can still have with civil society in Africa, the first thing we should do is listen to them, because they know what they need, and they also know what is secure and not. We, from here, from save the Netherlands, it's easy to think, oh God, well, they're slow and whatever. No, but you have to live the situation.
And not a performative listening, I assume.
Yeah.
We invite you, then you tell a story, and then... So, Madame, Mrs. want to say something? Could you please finish your points on what needs to happen? Or was that a very important shot? Please go ahead. Thank you very much. The influence of BRICS, I'm afraid it's quite a big geopolitical question, given the nature of this conversation. I'm looking at Paul. He's the responsible for the event. Oh. Yeah, I need to keep to protect the scope. Could you please finish your points on what needs to happen?
I have 2 more points. I think so. In addition to listening to the local, you have to support more community-led activities that goes all the way to the grassroots. Why? Because in face of a strong government, civil society organizations and local communities, it's difficult for an autocratic regime to go against what local communities want. So support locally led, community-led activities, which is really difficult, but...
and what does that mean, support? Are we talking about funding, about what we call capacity building?
So
it's a problematic...
Support civil society organizations to go all the way to the grassroots, among other things.
Yes. Not limit to Kinshasa, as we hear.
Yeah.
But make sure that you are present.
May I just say something about that?
Please let him
just
finish.
As a little...
please
let him go, yes.
Please finish your...
And a third thing is, if we want to continue, we should stop having short-term project support. We have to understand that in order for civil society, in a situation as this, in order to actually really achieve something, it takes time and it takes money. That means that you have to start funding way more program, sort of, you have to have a program approach. And the other thing is you need to be more flexible in your kind of funding. Because, you never know which direction things are going and you cannot pre-plan everything.
Yes. I assume your recommendations really for the government, but also NGOs working with colleagues
everyone
in the south. So we have here some reflections on what it means. I learned a lot from Bert, actually, that civil society is not only NGOs, it's much broader concept. And in the video we saw it's a safe space where we come to exchange in that context. If you want to make it bigger, we can listen to Hannah Arendt, who actually say speaking is a second birth. So it's really about the ability to show yourself and have this ability to exchange outside of the government, which does not exclude engaging, maybe sometimes shaking hands with the devil, but also it's about understanding the legal framework and also these relationships. That's one of the key points that I take from you. Also from, for instance, Suzanne, is make sure that we remain in contact, because otherwise it's very difficult. Bert wants to say something, and I would like to go to both Yeno and Winnie. And I'm going to you to make sure that you have some contribution on something that we have missed. We started a bit late. Could we start? Can I see both of our speakers? Yeno, could you please, very short given the time, you have shared already how you, from Coded you do certain activities to support CSOs, to protect this civic space, and also, some of the strategies. Do you have something to add, maybe something that you missed in the conversation as a recommendation for a multilateral organization, but also for the Netherlands?
Oh yes, I will still emphasize on the fact that it's good actually for the embassy of the Netherlands and many others that are pulling out of the country to maintain presence in the country, because that actually also helps with the diplomatic relations and pressing on issues actually for the observation of human rights, governance, and the rule of law in the country. Because once they pull out, then everything is weakened. And when you look at what is happening, for example, in South Sudan, it's really disheartening at times, especially when you look at the political dimension. That also has an effect on the larger population, which is the citizens of this country. And I will also emphasize on what the previous speaker also said, that funding has to be long-term and sustainable, because we know some of these aspects really need a process and need a time. We cannot finish them in a very short time. So there is need for actually long-term funding, especially for some of the African countries, of which South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo is a part of. So it's a process for us to get somewhere. So if long-term flexible funding, of course, also could be considered, that would actually be great, because we don't have to be deriving into a specific directions, and then we forget actually other also very important factors. And I do agree with also one of the speakers that it's very important to hear out what the needs are and how those needs can actually be approached. We have also had a different way of how to handle issues. For example, we went into, pushing for legislative reforms, because we know, for example, the NGO Act of South Sudan affects actually the civic space and how, we operate in that civic space as well. So it's very important that we continue advocacy and also ensuring that such laws are actually reviewed, and also for looking out for the future, that when we have legislation that are passed, certain factors need to be considered and taken into consideration, not to affect the civic space carrying forward.
Yes, I have to break. Do you have like a few points? Otherwise, given the time.
The other thing I would also say is that, we should not really forget, all of us globally. We know that we are going through certain situations globally, but we also have to give a focus into the African region, because that is actually where also we have enormous challenges. I know this may be so much to ask for others, but forgetting the African continent and some aspects that are happening in our countries or spaces leaves us actually at a very more, let me say, vulnerable state of how we carry forward for the future. So when we consider actually positivity in the world, we also have to put, the larger picture into consideration, including Africa and many other countries that are also facing different challenges, as my own.
Thank you very much. We really relate to the point of Bert that look beyond the finances and short-term interest, and a clear plea for international solidarity and humanity. Winnie, please, and I'm looking at someone who will kick us from the... which time do we have to leave? 5 minutes? In 2 minutes? All right. Winnie, could you please give us something that you missed, some last recommendations? Winnie is a bit lost. This will lose contact. So this is, I actually...
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I was thinking that I was on mute.
We still have 2 minutes, by the way, Winnie, so please.
Yes, I was talking about integrate civil space into diplomacy and aid constitutionality. So sometimes what we see is civil society cannot be a side conversation. It must be a core condition of diplomatic and financial engagement. Some of our speakers have already talked about prioritize flexible and protective funds, because in some particular context, protective fund, we don't have active civil society activists don't have findings for security. So this must be the priority also when thinking about funding civil society or civil space. Also, the other recommendation, I'll talk about continuity, the continuity of past and ongoing initiatives. It is very important to know that there is initiative in countries with youth, with women, with peace actors, with Lego, etc. There is a lot of initiative ongoing in country, and we have to make sure that we have that continuity when fundings are coming.
Yes.
Not
Winnie, sorry for breaking. Someone want to kick me out of this place. So those points are taken. Make sure that CSOs are part of the diplomatic processes, also the funding point, and also the other one some people reminded. Someone want to really say something, but we really need to go out. So we are... Darfur was not mentioned. Mevrouw is not happy with that lack of presence of Darfur on this topic. Unfortunately, we are at the end, toch? We moeten stoppen. I would like to give the two speakers here the opportunity. I'd like to give the two speakers here the opportunity for some last remark, because what we understood today is about a mindset, but also the legality and also the different strategies, including financing, but also relationship was mentioned. Some last words for us. Maybe Bert for the new government, because you were very clear on
I
leadership.
very much enjoyed the last comments that were being made. Of course, we have to have, long-term support for NGOs. We have to make sure that it's inclusive, that in peace agreements they are being taken seriously, which they are not. These are very key elements, and I applaud Cordate what they're doing there. But the most influence we have, if it's part of exactly that political diplomatic part, make it conditional. Yes. Show where you really want to support. It's in the end not the old model of support only. It's combined with a diplomatic effort, which is really a condition for inclusive solutions in many countries.
Yes. CSOs, civil society as an inherent part of diplomacy.
I think we're completely on the same page here. It's funny how when I wrote it down, and I wrote down conditionality, that it was not appreciated. What I think it is all about is indeed an integrated approach in which you put all your eggs together and then be open in your discussion with host governments and say, we're very happy to help. But we have, like you, your sovereignty, we also have boundaries. And let's sit together and let's be open about this.
Yes, thank you very much. I apologize for not giving you the pace, because that was my intention. But I hope you learned a lot from our speakers. We understood that we are not powerless, Bert. We need to fight. We hear people from both Congo and Sudan who actually teaches us how you can fight and the different approaches. Sometimes you need to shake hands with the devil, but most important, it's really about us. It's about a mindset, and also make sure that we keep the relationship. Thank you very much. Paul and Sabina are there. Let's continue the conversation.